Wow, that was such an episode with Mitch. He always inspires me. And of course, this month we're talking about suicide awareness. And, we laid out some pretty heavy statistics on the transgender community, specifically the suicide statistics around that. So you have to listen in just to hear a little bit about that. But then there's Mitch, who can make us feel better about all of that, right?
Yeah, Mitch is great. It's always great to talk to him. He has such a wealth of knowledge about things. He has just this very uplifting, lovely demeanor and consciousness that I love to be around. And he's just got mad skills. So I think you're going to enjoy today's episode. Again, we are dedicating the month of September to suicide awareness and prevention. So it's another kind of tough topic. As we always say, you have to talk about it. But if this is a triggering topic for you, just do be aware, take care of yourself, and reach out when you need help.
The world is a lot right now. Are you feeling it? We all need new tools to help us walk through the chaos with grace, ease, and compassion for each other and for ourselves. In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who can bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. It's time to level up and be warriors for our kids and our communities. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that it really does take a village to raise our kids. We hope that this podcast serves to create and support that community for you. Join us as we discuss and practice our core tools, which are proven mind-body techniques that can be used by anyone to improve your life on a daily basis.
Welcome back to the Warrior Parent Podcast. Thank you for joining us again. And we are so happy to have you here today when we are speaking with our good friend, Reverend Mitch Austin. And Reverend Mitch has been on the show before. He is a transgender man, an interfaith minister, and a public speaker and trainer. He's passionate about service to others and making the world a place that works for all, which is something I just love. I've taken multiple classes and workshops with Reverend Mitch, plus I've heard him speak so many times. He is a fantastic speaker. He always brings heart, he brings entertainment, humor, and just deep wisdom that gets you thinking about what you're meant to be thinking about and having some insights and some up-leveling of your own experience. So it's so great to have you here, Reverend Mitch. Thank you for saying yes.
Thank you, Marci, for that introduction. And thank you, Debbie, as well, for having me back. I just love that you're doing this work. I was a step parent to a teenager, and I just don't think you can get enough information or resources these days. And to hear people's stories and how they dealt with situations and being able to then think about your own situation and have some inspiration and hope, because I think that's where it all starts.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all in the stories, right? It's just people just need someone to relate to and feel like they're not alone in their journey. So this month, as everyone knows, we're talking about suicide. It's Suicide Awareness Month. It's been a little bit of a heavy month and a heavy lift for Marci and I, but we have let everyone know we're not afraid to talk about these things, and we know that Mitch is going to help us to uplift the discussion today. So anyway, that being said, as Marci mentioned, Mitch is a transgender male. What we know to be true, a lot of statistics show us that suicide rates in transgender communities is severely high. I'm going to share some statistics. I did a little research here. So there was a study in 2023, UCLA. More than 40% of transgender adults have attempted suicide, compared to cisgender, 7 times more likely to contemplate a suicide, 4 times more likely to attempt, and 8 times more likely to engage in self-injury. Those are some pretty daunting statistics, right?
Yeah.
There was another study done in Denmark of 6.6 million people. This is an enormous study. and they found that the transgender rates there were 8 times that of the cisgender, and 3.5 times the rate of suicide deaths in that community. So I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here. I'm just trying to let everyone know the reality of the situation and the reality of what goes on in the transgender community. So not only are those in that community carrying around their own heavy burdens, but probably the burdens of their friends around, right, who are also struggling with these things. So anyway, that being said, Mitch, tell people a little bit more about your background, how you came to be. It's such an inspiring story, and then we'll get into some of the other details.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing those stats, Debbie. And when I started my transition journey about 14 years ago, I learned some shocking statistics. It was eye-opening in a very somber way. And in fact, I became kind of an advocate for the community, and they do these trainings. And they'll take a whole weekend, they'll do an advocacy training, and they'll start the training off with something called the memorandum. And what they do, and it's really hard to watch, is they show pictures of transgender people who had either committed suicide or have been the victim of a violent crime in which they either died or were severely maimed for life. And at that time, I was trying to decide what I was going to be, like in terms of once I transitioned, was I going to be public about it or private? And that's called being stealth or under the radar. And I was fortunate enough to transition it well. Like people won't know unless I say something typically. And after watching the memorandum, it became clear to me that I couldn't keep this a secret. And so the work that I do is what I call micro activism, where I'm more one-on-one or in situations like this, where it feels personal and granular and people can get at least understanding of one transgender person, right? It doesn't mean you know them all.
Yes.
But what I can say, and what you mentioned, Debbie, and this is my greatest hope, no matter where you are on the path of understanding it, because it can be hard for people who don't have this issue to understand why anyone would ever want to do that.
Yes.
And then our mind wants to make up stories about those people. Maybe they're not stable, or maybe something happened in their childhood. We make up stories, or they're just pretending. But here's what I will say. No matter where you fall on that spectrum, even if you think we're just pretending or whatever you think, I will say the pain is real. Don't ever question the pain of this disconnect between gender expression, our bodies, and who we know on the inside. That's painful, whether you agree with it or not. If we can all understand that we're all part of the human family, and when somebody's hurting, that's something to care about. And I think because there's such a deep lack of caring, I think that's what's led to many suicidal attempts and unfortunately successful suicides.
I think the misunderstanding is mostly not about the gender transition or whatever. I think if you know, you know, and you're gonna do what you have to do to be happy and healthy in your body, or at least try to. I think what most transgender people probably are struggling with is the harassment, the bullying, the abuse, the discrimination, and probably worst of all is family rejection, which is huge, right? So
it's huge.
so it's I think, does it speak to that? Do you feel like it's more about those things than actually transitioning or whatever you have to go through, or a combination of those things?
Well, anytime we're othered, and I think most people can relate to this on some level, we've all been othered, right? Maybe we weren't athletic and we were picked last, whatever. We get othered in our society. It's just part of our kind of survival brain to notice the differences. And I had brought up the commonalities. and I'm encouraging people to push past their own resistance and find the common ground so that connection can happen, because it's those disconnects, right, that lead to bullying, that lead to othering, that lead to all of the fearful behavior, because that's really what it is. It's fearful behavior. I don't understand this, and it feels like a threat. And that's when people go into the judgments and the name calling and the rejection, and all of the hurt and pain gets dumped on this person for something they can't do anything about. Like, this is who they are, you know.
Right.
Try to change your eye color. Like, you know, it's just,
Right.
right, it is. So so that's really where it all kind of builds up, you know. And I've had people say, oh, you're so brave for transitioning. It really wasn't a much of a choice. You know, I either lived an authentic life or I was living a lie, and that's no kind of life. So it isn't so much that I chose this, I just chose to live life authentically, which to me, any other life wasn't really living.
Right. Right.
And then people get beat up for that. So you don't find any relief. And then you start to make a permanent decision about a temporary problem, because it does shift. It does. And sometimes it takes family members time and exposure and just to come around. I fortunately had family members who just got it right away. who didn't care. They just wanted me to be happy. You know, my cousin is so wonderful. You know, I went to go see her and tell her that I was going to be transitioning, and it was all a secret because I wasn't going to tell it ahead of time. She goes, well, what's going on with you? Are you becoming a man? And I said, yes. And she's like, okay, when we get home, we'll tell the boys. Like if I said I was an alien and had 2 heads, she'd buy me 2 hats for Christmas. Like, it's just that level of understanding and acceptance that I have in my family. And on my brother's side, they're evangelical Christian.
Yes.
That was really daunting for me to tell him.
Yes.
And he was lovely about it. He said, well, figures, he's known me my whole life. He's older than me. And then I was worried about his wife, because, you know, she's very strong personality. And before I could get back home, she had already friended me on my other name. And they were completely wonderful. They learned to use the pronouns. They apologized when they slipped. They used my new name. I mean, just the best response you could ever hope for. You know, I was the one othering them because of their religious preference. So I learned a few things about my own capacity to other people.
It's nice to be
and we
pleasantly
just do
surprised.
it. It's just part of our humanness to do that. So
and I want to give a shout out to you, Mitch, because you mentioned that, you know, you're open to sharing these in a personal way. And, you know, I knew you as a minister, as well, no, you were a practitioner, minister in training, interim minister. I knew you that way for a while, not knowing that you were transgender, as a lot of our listeners know, I have a transgender son. So that the first time we met and we're talking about other issues around, you know, speaking and this and that, you shared that. And for me, that was, and it was at a time and that my son was just really starting his journey. And we're so open, so generous with that, you know, that if there's any way I can help, if he ever has questions, because my son also was going female to male transition. And that's been very incredibly helpful. And it's lovely. So we hear the story, we see the statistics that Debbie shared. We hear the stories of the suicidality, the violence, particularly against trans women, particularly against Black and brown trans women. We hear that, we get beat down by that. You're the example of what I could call trans excellence. You're living life. You're doing it.
Did you just make that out? Did you just make that out?
Well, I kind of took it from Black excellence and Black joy, but it's related. It's like, you know, we can get beat down hearing the sad stories, and we have to talk about them. We need to know the statistics. And isn't it lovely to have examples of trans people? It doesn't mean you didn't have any struggles. I know you did. You've shared your struggles, but you're just, I just see you thriving, and I see you reaching your hand back to help those who were still trying to come through it. And that's beautiful. And so I personally, I know you've helped me personally. I've shared stuff with my son, especially when he had his top surgery, because that's scary. And, you know, and as Debbie talks about reactions of family, it can be frightening. And it's okay. Like, breathe, give yourself a minute, and then talk to the person, find out what they need, do the research, check out the resources that are out there to help you be a support, to show up, to use the right pronouns, to use the right name, to support the person you love in living their best life. And so I just appreciate that you did that for my family and that you continue to do that in the world. It's really important work.
Well, and I have to say that there were, you know, the trans community is a very tight-knit community, and they have large capacity to show up for each other because they get it.
Yeah.
You know, there was a Christmas I didn't have anywhere to go, you know, and people opened up their homes. So any reaching back I'm doing, somebody did for me, and I'm passing that on. And I love your word trans excellence, but what I want to say about that is not all trans experiences have the same resistance. It's almost like female to male transitioning is nearly invisible and rarely criticized much.
Right.
It's really is trans women of color in particular who get quite a bit of blowback.
Yes.
And their journey is just as excellent as mine, you know.
Yes,
and the transgender man or woman that transitions, but you can kind of tell, is just as valid and excellent as mine. And there tends to be a kind of unconscious bias, and I did this, so I'll own it, I did this early on, to think it's more valid for someone who transitions well that they made a good choice and is more credible than someone who didn't transition well in their opinion.
Yes.
And then they're judged as, you know, not having made a good choice. And it's such a personal thing. I would really like us to advocate the dropping of that rating that tends to go on.
I think the excellence is who you are, Mitch. It's not about it has nothing to do with the fact that, wow, it never knew
thank
that.
you. Thank
Right?
you.
That is true. And I'm glad you brought that up, because
you're
don't
the
have
most
to
amazing
look.
human being. Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to look a certain way and that's so, you know, lots of people and show up and it's, you know, you can be in a beautiful dress and have a beard, or you know, you've done top surgery, but you haven't done anything else. Or maybe you're doing everything you can because you want people to see you in that way. And some people are like, I don't care. I'm just living who I am. And so there's room for all of these expressions, and it's all trans excellence. And let us have the ally excellence where we show up and just love, 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 accept, and not just accept, but cherish, celebrate all of the ways that people show up, whether in their in transgender community, but in all the communities, all the ways. We've talked a lot about body acceptance with other people, you know, this idea that this is what's a valuable body and this is what's not. No, like letting all of these old paradigms go. And farewell to you, or really goodbye. Farewell means you're coming back, right? Just go. We don't need that anymore.
Yeah, we're done with that.
Yeah.
Mitch, you've done so much beautiful work, and not just in the transgender community, but just in general. But tell us a little bit about, let's think positive now and see all the amazing things that you're doing, and get out of the suicide conversation for a minute. And let's talk about what you're seeing out there in your world, and how you're making a difference. I know you have done some suicide training, but lots of other things too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm working a lot in schools and the corporate space now. In the schools, I'm bringing a program, Taming Your Inner Critic, and
that's a good one.
Using your inner champion, right, to do that. And that helps with the internal game, the dialogue, right, the stories, the judgments that we have about ourselves. or that
Mhm.
we allow others to attach to us.
Mhm.
So building resilience amongst particularly our young people is critical right now.
Yes.
Um, I also do a lot of training on multi-generational workplaces. And right now we have 5 generations in the workplace, soon to be 6 and 7.
Wow.
And each generation has a tendency, right? Has
Yeah.
tendencies, values, goals
Yes.
that are different,
Mhm.
Yeah, they make
strengths
each
and
other all
weaknesses.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
They're all pointing fingers and when I was your
Hmm.
age, this is what I did. Yeah,
Hmm.
like all that, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then
Yeah.
using the labels, right? A boomer or a
Yes.
millennial
Yeah.
or a Gen Zer
X, Z,
who are
alpha, all of
coming
them.
into
Yeah.
the workplace right now. And what we're noticing, particularly with technology and the way it's impacted our young people and the isolating that goes on,
Mm.
and the lack of breadth of experiences, like having to communicate face to face is very hard in
Yeah.
person for our young people. So they've had a very particular lens. And in fact, our Gen Zers have more in common with the silent generation because of
Mhm.
the impact that COVID has had.
Yes.
And they have at their fingertips everything that's going on in the world,
Yeah.
right? The war in the Ukraine and Russia, right? So they see a very scary world, much like the silent generation did in World War II. And
That's
that's
very
why we're seeing
interesting.
with many of our young people, they're saving money, they're staying at home longer, they don't want to drive. They're very, very risk adverse.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
That's
interesting. I was
highly
just thinking that.
problematic,
I was just
right?
thinking
When
about
you,
this morning, because it's one of my nephew's birthday and he's in his 20s. And I was kind of thinking, and
Mhm.
I was thinking, well, how, he's still home. And then I kind of looking at my
Yeah,
9 nieces and nephews, you know, 8
yeah.
out of 9 of them are basically still home and they're at all
Mhm.
different levels, but it's not like a locked in the basement playing video games. Like they're thriving. This is just something different with this
Mhm.
generation. And
Mhm.
several of them didn't start driving until later. My son's
Mhm.
still struggling with it. So just
Mhm.
exactly what you're saying, seeing that, and he does find the world very, very frightening. He's
Yes.
very aware of all the statistics and he'll say, did you know this and that? And
Yes.
I hadn't really seen, that's exactly it. He has access to it. He sees it and he's kind of like, nope. That's not for me.
Yeah, when you have too
So
much knowledge and not enough life
yes.
experience to balance it.
So what do
Yeah.
they need? How do we help these kids? What do you suggest for them to help them
Well, I
do that?
think part of the older generation, we and parents can start to give uh, resistance opportunities that are appropriate to where your
Mm,
youth is at. Part of what has disabled socially some of the young people is too much hand holding and smoothing of the way forward and not giving them opportunities to resolve conflict, to have
helicopter
communications with
parenting, we
older
hear.
adults, or to speak in person, go up in person,
Yeah.
right? Just getting that ability to do those things and opportunities. And the book that I work with, which is called A Different Kind of Diversity, that talks about the generations, he noted in there that parents have spent so much time preparing the way for their kids, they haven't prepared their kids for the way. So
Yes.
we do need
Whoa.
to
Whoa, whoa,
allow them
whoa,
to
whoa. Say
skin their
that.
knees every now and then
Say it
and
again.
self
Repeat that. Repeat that. Say it again.
soothe and figure things out.
Yeah, say that again. That was important. Say it one more time. Was
The parents have spent so much time
time.
preparing the way for their kids, they haven't prepared their kids for the way, which
Yeah,
is navigating the lumps and bumps of life that aren't smooth.
exactly. Yeah.
And
It's like
and I'm
we,
hearing anecdotally horror things. I used to be in HR. We have young adults coming in, and when they're told it's an 8-hour day, they're like, "That's too much of a commitment," and they walk out. Like things you would never have dreamt of doing in
Yeah.
an interview.
yeah.
Um, because
It's
it's just the
interesting.
consciousness isn't there.
We've come from this place, when parents always want to do better for our kids. We want them
Oh
to,
yeah.
and so,
Oh yeah.
Deb and I come from this time, but you as well, where there's sometimes downright abuse, sometimes there's verbal abuse, there's emotional abuse, and so we're like, no, we're going to do it different. But in some cases we've shifted to, like you say, preparing the way and not allowing our kids to have these moments of discomfort, moments of challenge. And so this is something we've had some gentle parenting parents on who talk about letting kids figure things out more and and so but it's tough because you love them, you want to help them, and yet
Well, I think,
are you helping when
yeah,
you do it for them? You're not.
I think what Mitch said, in the beginning, we were talking about the access to all the information, right? So I think as me, like I was a late parent, right? I had my kids in late 30s and almost 40 years old. So I almost had too much information about what was going on in the world. My mom, on the other hand, had me when she was 17. She didn't know anything. It was like, I'm out standing underneath the semi truck when I'm 4. Like they couldn't find me. I was just running around the neighborhood. I mean, that's just the way it was, right? But now, we're traumatized because we see every single thing that's going on, every statistic, every bad thing that's happened. My daughter, when I was traveling all the time, and she started having panic attacks, and I was flying all the time, and she on the news had saw a plane crash. So every time I got in a plane, which was every week, she's having a panic attack, and she started slipping notes in my suitcase. And I don't know if I ever told you that, Marci, but yeah, it would. But I think that's what you just said was so relevant. That we started getting freaked out about so many things that we heard about that maybe we never even heard about. This shit was going on all the time. We just never heard about it, right?
Right, true.
So right, so we start panicking, and then here we go, right? So it's this whole cyclic thing that's happened. But wow.
Well, and here's a fun fact that I think will be helpful to people. There's actually a part of the brain, it's, I think, the mid-cingulate cortex, that when we do something hard that's difficult, that area grows. And then our ability to do something even harder becomes easier. But if we don't do hard things, it shrinks. And so literally your ability to navigate difficult things diminishes. In your brain, that surface area shrinks, and your ability, and that's where resilience comes in.
And we know that the brain is developing
when
their kids, even all the way up till 25. So it's even that much more important. That's so relevant that, and if we can remind ourselves to think that way, like, am I giving my child an opportunity to grow their brain so that they can do more, or are we shutting it down? And
the same is true for adults too, right? We get comfortable, and then that area shrinks. Every workshop I give,
you're
I
dealing with
encourage
this
people to do hard things.
You're dealing with this present moment, and you're just trying to keep things easy, but that's not necessarily what we need to do. You need to stop and maybe sit down with them and say, wow, this is tough. I see your pain, but not solve it for them. Not immediately call the teacher or call the coach or call the other parent or whatever.
Right. What are you going to do about it? What are your
pull
options?
out your checkbook and fix it,
How can I support you?
These are real things. God, I can look back and see it and be like, oh. But it's great that you're expressing it, because that's what we need to know. We want to grow that brain, not keep it all comfy and safe. So then it's not. So then when we need that resilience, it's like, I can't deal with this.
Exactly. And if you think about work environments you've had to navigate, and different personalities and some not so loving things going on, right? If you can have some, willpower and ability to navigate that, is critical.
There's a lot of crazy going on in the workplace.
I think it also helps when you're more resilient. The bullying, the name calling doesn't land as deep. Right? Because you have some internal resources to move through it. And so the confluence of preparing the way, not growing that resilience within your internal mind, and the pressures of the world. Now, landing at the doorsteps of our kids. We can't
Right.
Yeah.
spoon feed it to them over time.
These
It's
are,
kind of a perfect storm in a terrible way for the level of suicide that we're seeing
Yeah.
in the world.
Absolutely. And
these
that's
are
why,
tough times, and you gotta have your toolkit, you gotta have your big brain, you gotta have your tools, your breathing, and you're reminding yourself, you talked about the inner
Yeah.
critic, that you can do these things,
Mhm.
and then let's just take a step forward and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
yeah.
grow.
And I feel for parents right now. It used to be you could just parent how you were parented, but it's almost like you got to take a whole separate course.
Yes.
What is halt? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired? What am I looking for in my kid when they change behaviors to know that they might
Yes.
be contemplating harm? Like so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's the
Yeah.
generational stuff. It's like you said, and it's the generational trauma at what Marci and I
Mhm.
have found, if anything, throughout this entire year plus process is about the parents having to do just what you said and relearn what it is, because they're pretty sure, like, I'm not going to do what my
Right.
parents did like that. We have had that level of enlightenment where we realize that
Yeah.
that probably wasn't working out so good. And so they're retraining. They have to do the work themselves, what we call an inside job, right?
Yeah.
And then relearn how to parent, and learning along with a whole bunch of new parents, right, who are going, yeah, like, this sounds better. I'm having some success with this. And
Yes.
that's part of why we do the parent podcast, right?
When we
Yeah.
know better, we do better.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Well, we're stronger together because everyone
Yes.
knows a little piece and can bring
Yes.
that to the
Oh my
table.
gosh, I've learned so much doing the podcast and talking to all these different experts about like raising kids. So I'll be ready for
Right.
grandkids that I can do better there, although I think I get to just spoil, but
More
to,
we're just counting the days. Like, one of these days we'll have
yeah,
some grandkids. We're gonna
yeah,
start adopting grandkids pretty soon.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So wow. I think we're getting low on time. I did want to bring something up. And that was around the Trevor project. While I was doing
Yes.
some research, I found this really amazing group. And Marci's going to give their phone number and everything on the way out. But the Trevor Project was started to help with mental health issues and the LGBTQ community. And wow, is that a resource? So again, I'm going to let Marci take that away. But Mitch, it's such a pleasure. You inspire me every time I have a conversation with you.
Thank
And
you.
we just
Thank
need
you.
more Mitches on the planet. That's all.
Well, not too many. It'd be a messy planet. I'm not very organized.
You know your strengths.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So we always like to ask people how our audience can find you, because you do coaching.
Absolutely. Yes.
So share the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to go through some of the coaching, if they want to get in on some of your great classes like the Inner Critic
Yes.
class or
Mhm.
Rise and Speak. He
Mhm.
has a series of great classes. So share that.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm happy to speak, do training, schools or organizations, and also one-on-one coaching. And if you just have a question, just send it to me. I'm happy to help. I can be reached, best way is probably email Mitch, Mitch, at speakteachinspire.com.
Wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, he is a great speaker. If you have an event or you're looking for someone to give a great talk, reach out to Mitch, because he will have you laughing, crying, and coming out with new ideas and new inspirations. So yes, I want to give this information on the Trevor Project. And so we've talked about how you can call 988. That is the National Suicide Hotline. You can call or text. Anybody can do that. If you're a veteran, then you hit number 1 and it will take you to a veteran-specific counselor. But if you are in the LGBTQIA plus community, if you are queer, if you are trans, and you would like to speak to someone who's more catered to your experience, you can also call the Trevor Project, which has its own hotline. And so that phone number is 866-488-7386, or you can text them at 678-678. And of course, you can also dial just the 988 or text 988, but that is a more specific number for people that are in this queer community, in this greater LGBTQ plus IA plus community. So just have that information. So thank you to the Trevor Project for the great work they're doing. Thank you so much, Reverend Mitch, for being on today. I know we'll have you back again soon. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
And now for your core mental health break. This is your opportunity to take a moment to support your mental wellness, your peace of mind, your own ease and grace. Take some time every day to support your mental health. You deserve it, and it matters.
So let's just take a moment to breathe. We'll take 3 deep intentional breaths to just bring ourselves to a place of center and calm. So breathing in through the nose, allow your chest and your belly to fill with air. Pause for a moment at the top of the breath, holding it before you release it. You can blow it out through your mouth, like you're blowing it out through a straw, or just release it through your nose if that's more comfortable. And now again, receiving that breath in, filling the chest, filling the belly, pausing at the top of the breath, and then release it all. Releasing it slowly and intentionally, calming your nervous system. One more time. Breathing in, pausing at the top, and releasing. Thank you for pausing for yourself today. Your mental health is important, and you deserve peace, calm, and ease in your life every day. So please, choose to receive it. It is always available right at your center, your heart, your core. Stay well, friends.
Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast, which is a production of our nonprofit, Cour Experience, who also creates and distributes Cour tools. You can find us at courexperience.org. Make sure you join us next week for another informative conversation to help you and your family show up mindfully, purposefully, and joyfully with each other and in your community.
Our Core Tools platform consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in spite of what's going on in your world. We want to thank Samuel Hale, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. Technical and marketing support comes from Inspire Your Brand. Our podcast editor is Justin Beeden. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. Thanks for listening. If you resonate with the idea of creating a community to help support kids and families, won't you join us by following the podcast and sharing this episode? You can even write a review. It truly does take a village, and we appreciate you.